part of our website planning series. This is the kickoff webinar. We're going to talk a little bit more about where you should build your site. And then I encourage you to take a look at the other parts of this series as well, because we're going to go into each topic in detail regarding key aspects of your site, such as not only knowing where to build it, but how to make people, how to get people to the site, how to secure your site. There's a lot to do with a website, and it can definitely be overwhelming. So we take these little bite-sized chunks to hopefully help you figure out what the next steps will look like for you. We do have quite a few people online that have been to our other webinars, so I'm happy to see some people back. For those of you that are new, welcome. My name is Sarah Mayu, and I am our program manager here at the Temple Small Business Development Center. And if you were wondering what the SBDC is or what we do, we are actually part of a nationally accredited network of small business development centers that serve the entire United States. So there are over 1,000 centers actually across the country. And each of us help small businesses we provide no-cost consulting and training, such as the one you're on today. We are also funded by the state government and then hosted at local universities. So you might know that Temple University is here in Philadelphia, so that's where we're located. But there are actually 16 centers across Pennsylvania. So you might be joining us from Scranton, Pittsburgh, wherever you are, since this is a webinar. And we are very happy to have you online with us today. Just as a reminder, this is set up as a Zoom webinar, so you cannot accidentally unmute yourself. You cannot turn your video on, but we do want you to be engaged, So please do utilize the chat. Do put questions in the Q&A throughout the session. We will be watching those and making sure we can get to your questions. And as a reminder, a follow-up email will be sent within 1 to 2 business days. That includes a link to this recording and a copy of our guest speaker's PowerPoint. If you have any other administrative questions, you can always send me a direct chat. I will be online throughout the session. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker, Jenn Wells, and she will talk a little bit more about where to build your website.
Hello all, and welcome to today's presentation. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. So you are here because you're trying to figure out where to build your website. One thing I want to know before we even get too far into this, if Sarah could hit the first poll, is how many of you have a website already and are debating if you're on the right platform, and how many of you are just getting started and don't know where to build it? And then based on what people answer, we can talk a little bit more about the transfer process. So while you guys are filling that out, a little bit about me. I am Jenn Wells. I am the co-founder and marketing director of BrandSwan. We are a branding, web design, and marketing company. And so, I get to talk about all my favorite things in this webinar series, and I absolutely love doing this. As for me, myself, I am a reformed perfectionist. I am the half of the company that lives by bullet points, deliverables, timelines, and that's what makes me enjoy the marketing part of our business so well. My business partner, Jane, is the one who is our creative director, and she loves all things creative, but websites are a little bit of both. And that's why in this webinar series with Temple, you'll see us kind of alternating who's talking about what, because it takes creativity and it takes a lot of planning and strategy to build a website. I also made a note that I love giving free consultations. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about today and you really want to pick somebody's brain, feel free to schedule with me, even if it's just to get some free advice. I am happy to do that. So that link will be in here. All right, let's see, poll answers. Okay, so we've got, let's see, the majority of you do not have websites, which is great because you haven't already set it up in the wrong place. So you won't have to start over. Some of you do. If you've set it up on some of the main ones, I'll talk about how to save your content if you want to switch. And for the people who say technology is hard, let us know what your questions are and hopefully we can address them today. All right, so we're going to talk about website builders today. Just to kind of explain what that is. Any website you go to where you can kind of click through, add an image, add some text, that's a website builder. We are not talking about building websites from scratch. We're not talking about writing code, HTML, divs, none of that. We're talking about the platforms that set it up so that anyone can learn how to do it without having to go to school or do extensive training for this. So many different platforms for this. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I have to pick one of the 4 in this presentation today. Yes, I'm going to go over these 4 because they are the ones that I see most commonly. They are the ones that our clients are asking us about, and they are ones that we have some experience working with. But there are probably thousands of options out there. And if you end up choosing something else, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. However, I will caution you against GoDaddy Builder. This one specifically, I see a lot of people use because they end up hosting with GoDaddy. So they're like, oh, I'll just use their website builder. It'll be really easy. And it's very limiting. I'll just say that. It's very limiting. It's hard to do some of the things that you want to do. Constant Contact blew me away that they even had a website builder. And it's not that Constant Contact is bad. I don't want to pick on them. It's just that any type of platform that was originally designed for something else, in this case for email marketing, and now they've just got a random add-on. Oh yeah, we do website builders too. Probably the website builder is not going to be as comprehensive and robust as a website that their original service was the website builder. Same thing with Google Business Pages. They have a build your website option, which seems great. It has 4 sections. You can't customize it at all. I think the only thing you can add is your logo and a little line about your business. Everything else is auto-generated from the testimonials that you get and the other information in the Google business listing. So it seems like a great, quick, easy answer, but if you want to be able to customize and really promote your business, then you're going to find these things to be frustrating because of those limitations. All right, some things to consider when you're deciding which platform you want to use. We'll start with the initial setup because that's probably where most of you guys are. How do I get started with these things? So the major difference between WordPress and the other 3 options is that WordPress is software that you install yourself. So you would have to set up your own hosting account. A lot of hosts have an easy install option, so they're going to let you just click through it, but there's still a little bit of extra research with that. And I know some people don't want to deal with the initial part, setting up the host, setting up WordPress, so they'll have someone come in and just do that part of it, and then they're happy to try to build and learn things after that. Once you get WordPress installed and you get a good theme or a good theme builder, then it's basically the same as these other 3 options where it's drag and drop. But yeah, Squarespace, Shopify, Wix, it's hard to get easier than this because it's literally go to the website, create a username and password, and then start clicking around. So that is definitely the appeal of some of these other ones versus having to figure out all the tech stuff. I see a couple questions. And I think these are going to get answered as we go through the pros and cons. So I will come back to that. What do I think about Shopify? Because we're going to kind of talk about the options here.
Yeah, I was going to agree with that one, Jen. One thing really quickly though, I'm wondering, because we have people from all different backgrounds here on the call, if you could just go over a little bit what hosting a website means.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's 2 different parts. People get the domain and the hosting confused. Hosting is where your website files live. So they have to be stored somewhere on the internet in order for people to see them. Whereas your domain name is basically the sign or the address pointing to it. So think of that as the address to your house, but then your house is where all your stuff is. So those are the 2 most important pieces of the website. You're going to need a host, and Squarespace, Shopify, and Wix host your website in addition to being the website builder. So you don't have to worry about hosting if you work with them. Whereas WordPress, you'll have to set up your host first and then install it. So that's kind of the difference between those. And I know someone asked about Etsy. Etsy is actually different because that is an account that you have with them, but you're not really building your own website. And there's, depending on what kind of products you sell, it might make sense to use a marketplace website versus building your own because you'll get so much more exposure that way. That really just depends on your business type. And actually, Sarah, I do have another poll if we want to run the one about what types of products or services people have.
Yep, we just launched that. So if everyone could take a look and let us know, what does your business sell?
Yeah, and I see someone asked, if using WordPress, who would we work with to host? Yes, so, and actually I probably need a whole slide about this. So if you go to wordpress.com, you'll see that it looks a lot like Squarespace. There are 2 different types of WordPress. There's one that is a website builder online, just like Squarespace, just like Wix. I don't recommend using them because they have a lot of limitations. If you're going to use WordPress at all, I would say use the free open source software that you can install yourself. That is the one that is super customizable. They're not going to nickel and dime you for each little upgrade you want. They're not going to limit the number of fonts and colors you want to use. So if you're going to do WordPress at all, you might as go all in and use the self-installed one. And as far as picking a host, we have my recommendation is SiteGround. That's the one that we use. There's a lot of great hosts out there. I'm not a huge fan of GoDaddy personally, but tons of people do use it. So I think it depends what you end up needing in your website. Like, are you going to have a website with a ton of traffic, a lot of products? You might want something that has a higher bandwidth. If you're just going to have a simple 3 or 5 page website, you can host pretty much anywhere and you'll be okay. All right, so we've got a fairly even mix of products and services. I love the person who was honest and said something vague and hard to define, whoever that was. If you don't mind putting that in the chat, I'd love to know what you do. And then other. So, okay, so we'll make sure if I forget to talk about e-commerce and products in here, guys, just remind me in the chat so that we cover that. That's the reason Shopify is in here, because that is definitely what we recommend for e-commerce, but we'll get to that. All right. So after setting it up, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the ease of use. So we talked about website builders. All of these have some form of drag and drop builder. You don't have to write code. You don't have to know how to use a div. You just have to know, oh, okay, insert image, and then you drag it around and you choose where it's going to go. So when I say drag and drop, that's what I mean. It's dragging and dropping elements in. Again, WordPress, once you get past that initial install, if you pick a theme that makes it easy, it's going to be easy. We use Divi, or we also recommend Elementor. So those are kind of the 3 parts for using WordPress. Is you're going to need the host, you install WordPress, you set up the theme, and then after that, it is all drag and drop, customizable. It's pretty easy. Squarespace, it wants to be easy to use, but what I have found is that the drag and drop can actually be really tricky, because setting up columns, if you want things to sit side by side, you're literally hovering over and things are moving and shifting, and it's not as easy as it's supposed to be. So not all the settings are where you expect them to be. You have to dig around, you have to get used to the quirks. So Squarespace is set up for anyone to use, but it has so many kind of individual things that there is a bit of a learning curve to getting to use the platform. Shopify, I think hands down the easiest one to get started with without having a lot of background knowledge. And then Wix, I put medium learning curve, and that's just because they have so many features now. It takes a long time to dig through everything that's available there. But as far as the drag and drop builder, it's pretty simple. Customization. And so for those of you that you know, if you consider yourself to be a little bit of a control freak, or if you have a business that is hard to define, or people are going to want a lot of background knowledge about it, you know, like some types of consultants or luxury services that are more expensive, you're going to want more pages that explain what you do, right? Or maybe you want to do something with events and, you know, collecting tickets on your site. Anything that is more than just, here's a page, here's an image, here's a product. This is where something like WordPress can really be your friend, because it is so incredibly customizable. And that's as far as the design, the styles, anything that you want to do with it. The comparison there, Squarespace, Shopify, Wix, a lot of them, you're reliant on the theme that you pick. So the difference between a theme builder is that it lets you add anything you want. It lets you pick any colors, any fonts, any choices, and also layouts, right? So how many columns do you want here? How many rows are going to be in this page? Squarespace, what I have found is that some of the themes will have a beautiful homepage and you think, oh, I'm getting this beautiful site, but then all the additional pages follow the exact same format. So the homepage is going to be cool. It's going to look like it's customized, even though it's the theme. And then every page after that is going to be cookie cutter, exactly the same. For a lot of people, they don't care about that. That's fine. It still conveys the information. For other people, they want the design to be a little more spruced up and a little bit more compelling, and that gets frustrating. Shopify is very similar to Squarespace. Wix is the one that I found was the least customizable in terms of not being able to change the layouts. So they have beautiful themes on there, but you don't get to make it your own. You can change the colors, the fonts, and then you use the theme as is. And keep in mind, technology is constantly changing. So if you say, hey, it wasn't like that when I used it, absolutely let me know, because I could always use a refresher on what's going on with Wix. Not, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, they were having trouble keeping up with HTML5, and I was warning everybody off of using them. They were still using Flash, which doesn't work on a lot of browsers now, and they have overcome that problem. So it pays to keep up to date with current standards, just as a disclaimer. So this is an example of a website builder for those of you that are looking at these words and saying, like, what does all of this mean? I don't understand. So this is kind of the empty page, and this is an example from Shopify. And so these are the sections that you can drop in. You can add a section here. And so they've got, some preset modules like image with text, featured collection. The featured collection is probably the products, judging by the little sticker there. You can change the header, you can change the footer. But to some extent, you're kind of limited. Whereas with WordPress, you can drop in anything you want based on different themes. Some might have testimonial sliders. They might have galleries. Ours have little previews of team members, things like that. And you know what, Sarah, I confess I completely forgot what my third poll was, but I feel like it's time for it.
Yeah, sure. We're going to talk a little bit about, let me pull it up. Which platforms are you considering? I think this is probably a good time to discuss. And while people are filling that out, we actually do have a question in the chat. I'm going to launch the poll and everyone can see, what the most popular platforms are. You can maybe let us know what you were thinking about. But at the bottom, we said something else. And actually someone posted in the chat about HubSpot, which is something else for sure.
Okay, yeah. So HubSpot is another one where originally it was something else, right? So it's a CRM, and it's a great CRM, which, customer relationship manager, does great with like the sales and the pipelines and keeping track of everything. The website builder, I don't love. I have used it before. It reminds me of the GoDaddy builder, where it's just kind of limited in the design. And maybe if you were a pro with HubSpot website builder, you could make something attractive. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're probably going to end up with a really ugly website. So that's kind of my assessment there. And honestly, I'll say the same thing for like constant contact emails. Yes, it is possible to make an attractive email in constant contact, but most people don't seem to be able to manage it. I've seen tons of ugly emails too from people who haven't trained themselves in how to use the templates and how to use the features to make something pretty. So if you already have HubSpot and you're using the CRM and you want to use the website builder because it ties in with everything else, that's definitely a benefit to doing that. You don't have to. You can use the HubSpot lead forms and embed them in another website. And we have a couple of customers who have done that. So I guess it just depends what your goals are for your site. Woodpecker email. I don't know about Woodpecker email. That's new to me. But if it's an email marketing platform or if it's an email provider, then my general recommendation is going to be careful if they have a website builder as well.
All right. That was some great advice on one of the lesser known platforms out there. And now we're going to take a look at what everyone said. So looks like a lot of people are considering WordPress and Shopify. I think Jen, you would agree with me that that's probably a good thing.
Yes. All right. Good job, guys. I think you're on the right track. Okay. Yeah. And we actually tell people sometimes, depending on their e-commerce needs, actually, I think we have, well, e-commerce is coming up soon, but we do, depending on how complex their products are and how many they have, a lot of times Shopify is a better choice than WordPress, just depending what you're doing. Okay, well, we're on SEO, so let's talk about that. This is one where, so I feel like up until now, WordPress isn't really presenting well compared with the other options, because it's like, oh, it's confusing, it's extra steps, it's whatever. But if you want good SEO on your website, WordPress is going to be the best place to go, because it's not just one choice. It's not like, here's your SEO, options. No, you can add any plugin you want, any functionality you want, and it will do different things for you. Our favorite SEO tool for WordPress is Yoast. And the free option of that is really, really robust. So it will literally, you put your keyword in and it will give you a rating and it will tell you how to improve your SEO on that page. It literally analyzes your content for you, which is amazing. I'm sure there are other plugins that do similar things. but Yoast is the one that I hear the most people using, and it's the one we use personally. So that's my
Yeah,
yes.
sorry, I don't want to cut you off, Jen. I just want to make sure everyone knows what SEO is as well.
Oh,
sorry, we're using a lot of big terms. I
I
think a lot of people
know.
know what SEO is because it's so popular lately, but just in case they don't, would you mind doing a little quick description for that?
Yes, thank you. I'm getting in far enough that I'm forgetting what's jargon and what's not. So search engine optimization. If you want to be found on the first or second page of Google, then you're going to need to work on your SEO, and you're going to make sure that the search terms people are using. So for us, maybe it's web design Delaware. For you, maybe it's, I see Deborah sells biscotti. So, you know, maybe you have a certain custom kind of product. Whatever people are searching for to look for products like yours, you want that to be your keyword. You want to make sure that keyword is reflected in your content. And the better your SEO score, the more likely you are to be high in the search when people are trying to find you, which means you'll get more leads, you'll get more sales. So that's why SEO is such a big deal. So going back into the different options. So WordPress, incredibly customizable, super helpful. Squarespace, Shopify, and Wix, they all offer SEO tools, but they're not always very clear about exactly what those SEO tools are. And some of them do it for you. Anytime they do it for you, I'd be leery, because is this automated system really going to know the keywords that I need better than I do? Most likely they're basing the keywords on the content that you've written. And if you're not an SEO expert, the content you've written might not reflect what people are searching for, right? So they're not necessarily basing it on content that is already optimized for SEO. So, but it's kind of like a rabbit hole, right? Like this automated assistant's trying to help you, but it's using the wrong source to pull words from, and then it's not going to do a good job. So anytime it doesn't actually tell you what you're getting with your SEO, that's something to watch out for. I will tell you that like Squarespace, some of these have extra apps that you can add on. I don't know how good they are. I don't know if they compare with tools like Yoast. Any other, I was gonna say, I might give you guys a pause if anyone has questions about SEO. And I know Deborah said, what about cost? But I don't know which slide that was relating back to.
Yeah, Deborah, if you can let us know what you're thinking in terms of cost, yeah, put that in the chat so we have a better idea. But
oh,
also,
if it's cost of the platforms overall, I do have that in here.
okay, great. So maybe we'll hold off on that for a second. But one thing about SEO really quickly before we move on that I think is important to think about is Jen talked about all of the different settings that these have, right? Some of them will automatically do some of it for you, like Yoast SEO is really great for that. If you are savvy in coding, which many of you maybe aren't, I mean, I'm not going to make assumptions about who's on the call, but if it's not something that you are comfortable with, finding something that has an automated feature or app is going to be very helpful. If you're someone who thinks I can go on YouTube and maybe figure out how to put some of the keywords into the back end of my website using metadata and giving the right descriptions to my pictures and everything like that, you can also go that route, you know, I mean, and then maybe you don't need some of these additional features as much. That's just something to think about with the pros and cons of each of these, though, is what do you think is going to make it easier for you? Which features do you care more about, care less about? So it's not to say that if they don't have or offer an SEO feature, you can't have good search engine optimization. It just might be harder if you're not as technologically savvy. So like you said, Jen, I'll let them chew on that.
Yeah, that's definitely a question to ask, is how much time do I want to spend on this? So there's tech skills and comfort level with technology, and then there's also the time and whether or not you're willing to bring someone in to help set things up for you. Because SEO is an ongoing thing. Like you can improve your SEO by writing blogs and writing new content and getting back links from other websites. But the best thing you can do is set your website up properly the first time. And so for that, you could totally bring in an expert, get your website optimized when you first build it, and then it's kind of set it and forget it, unless you want to have a really strong SEO strategy. So you don't have to do everything alone. You can like do some of it yourself and then get some help to improve the things you're not comfortable with. Deborah asked, I'm a little confused about Yoast within WordPress. So actually this is, so plugins and extended functionality. Yoast is an example of a plugin. So most of these systems come with, here's your website builder, here's your, 5 or 10 options that you get with it. Customize the fonts and the styles, customize the content. Maybe it gives you a couple things for your SEO, like your page titles. But it comes with a set of options. But then you're like, you know, what I really want is events on my website, and I don't see that in here. So that would be an example of something you could add through a plugin, or if it was on Shopify or Wix, they call it an app. Squarespace calls it an extension. So it's just basically a way to add more functionality to the site than what originally came with it. As far as what's available with the apps, WordPress has everything you can imagine. You can integrate with Eventbrite if you want an event ticketing system that already exists, and then you want to put those Eventbrite events right into your website so they can ticket through there. You can also link to feeds for your Instagram and promote that and get people to jump over there. Obviously, the e-commerce stuff. Like I said here, anything under the sun that you can imagine, someone has probably built that plugin because WordPress is so common and so well serviced. Squarespace, so they have a limited library of extensions that you can add. They say they have a ton that you can set up through Zapier, which Zapier is an automation tool that lets you integrate different services. But what I've found is that even with instructions and Googling extra things, it can be really difficult. Plus, that's another tool you now have to pay for. So I would say anything that says, oh yes, it's available through Zapier, don't trust that because it might not work the way it says it's going to. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. So Squarespace has a limited library of extra extensions you can add. Shopify, really extensive, huge library of apps. And then Wix is more limited than the rest of them. So it's more of a, you know, hopefully the one that you want exists, but not necessarily. You have to browse the library and see. Someone asked about the Eventbrite plugin and is it easy to install? Easy to install, yes. If you were able to set up an Eventbrite account and add events there, then I think you will be able to add the plugin, no problem, because the level of tech is about the same. I can't think off the top of my head what the plugin costs, because if you look, you'll see like free options, but we have not recently found a free option that actually worked the way that we hoped it would. I want to say it's somewhere between $5 and $15 a month, but don't quote me on that. There, for a lot of plugins that have extended functionality like events, like syncing with the calendar, like pulling in a social media feed, the free ones aren't as good, and you'll end up wanting to do one of the paid ones. Most of the paid ones are on some type of monthly subscription option, unfortunately. And you can see that's a pattern with software in general. We used to be able to buy things once, pay a flat rate, and now everything is a subscription model, and plugins are the same way. All right, the real question that everyone has been wondering, e-commerce, how do I sell my stuff? So technically, you can do e-commerce with any of these platforms. With WordPress, the setup, just like everything else, it's going to be a little bit more complicated initially, but it's going to be more customizable. So depending what you want to do with it, you know, WordPress might be the way to go if you're like, I want to sell products, and then maybe it's a digital product like an ebook, and then it gets emailed to them, and then a password, and then there's a follow-up series in MailChimp. So if you wanted to do something like that, where there's different moving parts and you want to connect them all, WordPress is a great option. But if you're like, installing WooCommerce, and that's another thing I have to pay for, and I don't want to deal with all that, then maybe Shopify would be the way to go. You could technically do it on Squarespace. You can technically do it with Wix. They do have some integration with your, you know, if it's something that needs to ship. So they do try to make it easy for you. They're just a little bit more limited. It's not the number one thing that they do, whereas Shopify was literally developed for e-commerce. So the product and selling options are more in depth. They actually have SEO for products. So again, I can't guarantee that that's going to be amazing, but the fact that it's there and they're thinking about it, that's going to add to your website's overall SEO because it's doing it for the individual products and not just for the pages. So I would say you're really, the two choices you have if you're doing e-commerce, or my recommendations are either Shopify or WordPress. And if anyone has questions about WooCommerce, let me know, but that is a whole separate topic. And I do believe there's going to be a presentation on that. So you might want to come to the WooCommerce one if that's something you're interested in. There's other ways to sell through WordPress too without using WooCommerce. We set up products using Stripe, which is a payment processing system. And we have also set up products with Printify, which is for like t-shirts and mugs and printing products. So technically it's another platform, but it integrates really well with our website and we can put the products right on there. So you're not limited to just WooCommerce, but that's one of the bigger ones, the more popular ones that you're going to hear about a lot. All right, so tech support. This is something that all of us are going to need at some point. I have used the tech support on all of these, and I can tell you Wix was pretty underwhelming. And this was for someone who was on one of the lower level plans. When I researched it a little bit, what I learned is that based on the plan that you get with Wix, you get more access to tech support if you're paying for one of the high level plans. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're choosing Wix to cut costs, you might find that that's frustrating because they're not going to prioritize you. That being said, the only one that really had great tech support was Shopify. Squarespace, I honestly couldn't figure out how to reach out to tech support. They had a library of documentation to help you through things, but that's just reading and Googling it on your own. That's not a person there to help you. There's no chat support. And same thing with WordPress, because WordPress is a free service that's provided out there. There's no one that's monitoring it. So it's got incredibly extensive documentation. Literally just Google WordPress X not working and you will get pages and pages of results, but you're going to have to read through it and try to figure it out yourself. So if that's something that scares you, then WordPress might not be the way to go unless you have an IT person or you have a web design person that you can go back to when you get stuck on something. So anyway, this one is a point in favor of Shopify because like I said, I think their tech support is unheard of compared to a lot of the other platforms. All right, so that was a lot of information. I tried to break it down into a little table, and this is one thing that will be helpful when you guys get the slides later, so that you can see the cost comparison. You can see Jen's personal star ratings for each of the different features that we talked about, from initial setup to SEO, e-commerce, and so on. And then the prices down there. Keep in mind the price ranges can change a lot depending which plan you're getting. So like Wix has an inexpensive plan, but you can't customize your URL, right? So it's going to be wix.yourwebsite.com, and it's going to have the Wix logo in the footer. So anytime you see a free plan or you see a really inexpensive plan, make sure you check for stuff like that, because if you want your website to look like a professional business, then you're going to have to pay for the next level up to get rid of their custom branding. Okay, I'll go ahead and, well, you guys can start asking questions here. This is kind of a sneak peek at one of the other presentations that we're going to do, and also a freebie that I'm going to offer to you. So once you've picked one of these platforms, what do you do next? And I think a lot of us get the blank canvas syndrome when you're looking at an empty website and trying to figure out what to write for it. So this is a resource that we have on our website, BrandSwan, which is free. And it is basically our formula that we use to write website content. So what is the purpose of each page? What questions are users going to have when they get there? And then as you write the answers to those questions, that will help you to then start formatting that into content for your website. And so this goes over a basic service or product page, an about page, a home page, and a contact page. So if you're interested in that, that is free. That is on our website. The link is in this presentation. Other resources and links are here so that you guys can use this. And then our contact information at the end. So go ahead and questions.